Welcome, welcome to Top Rated Seller Webinars. We are so glad you're here with us. Today we have Mr. Hugh Williams, who is the VP of Experience, Search, and Platforms from eBay Marketplaces. And he's going to be presenting to us on search at eBay. Welcome, Mr. Williams. Today we have a little bit of housekeeping just to make sure that you are on pace with us. We're going to talk about whether the webinar is going to be recorded. Yes, we are recording the webinar. Yes, you will have available the video within 48 hours, hopefully 24, but I am away from my house, so give me 48 this time. We will also be sending out a PDF of the slides for the presentation, and you has generously provided those already. When those are available, we will be posting those on the Facebook group, so you can keep an eye on the Facebook group. Be happy to join. We'll sign you up there. It's getting to be a real active group. It's where you stay tuned with most of the news. We really want to encourage you to stay connected to Top Rated Sellers. We do have the Facebook group I told you about, and Eric and Karen are busily typing in the link to our Facebook group in the chat. We are also on Pinterest. You can find us there. And our next webinar, in fact, will be by Sandy Garcia on July 31st, and it will be about Pinterest. So if you're interested in that, be sure to sign up for our newsletter at pagemage.com/top rated seller webinars, and also join the Facebook group. We'll tell you all about that. And I believe I'm ready to hand it over to you, Mr. Williams.
Okay, so I think you guys have done most of the housekeeping, so I'm just going to zoom through all this and dive right in. So here's what I was hoping to talk to you guys about today, is really just to talk to you about the scale and size of eBay, how a search engine works. I'll keep that very, very short. Talk about our current technology. Really, I think then dive into a topic that I can tell is very important to a lot of the people who are on the webinar, and that's listing for success in search. And then I want to tell you a little bit about our next generation search engine, which we internally call Cassini. And then I'm looking very much forward to nice, fun Q&A at the end, which should be great. Let me really get the pace going here, because I know everybody is dying for me to get to the middle of the talk. So I thought it'd be fun just to talk about the size and scale of eBay just to start. I think that'll hopefully excite people about the scale of the problem that the team and I are lucky enough to work on. So we sell, this is amazing, we sell a Ford Mustang every 49 minutes. We sell a cell phone every 5 seconds, and we sell a pair of shoes every 6 seconds. So it's a very, very vibrant marketplace that I think we're all lucky enough to be involved in. If you kind of roll that up a level and say, well, you know, what does that mean over a year? And you know, this is publicly known information from last year. You know, we're selling around $75.3 billion of merchandise in a year, and I think that's up from 68 billion the year before in 2011. So we together are part of a very, very vibrant, very, very fast-moving marketplace, and that's super exciting. It's a super exciting place to work because of that, and I'm sure for many of you who are sellers, you know, it's a super exciting place to be part of. Maybe just diving into some numbers that are a little bit more behind the scenes. So we have over 112 million active buyers and sellers worldwide. So you know, an amazing number of people are coming and transacting on the platform. We certainly get over 250 million queries to our search engine, and that's what we'll spend most of the time talking about today. At peak, so if you picked the right day of the year when you know shopping's at its most brisk, you know, that might hit 400 million. So very, very large number of queries coming in the door of folks, buyers primarily, looking to find items that are offered by all of our sellers on eBay. And we have over 400 million live global listings. Again, that's one of those things that's moving very, very fast and rapidly growing. Again, getting more kind of under the hood, we have over 50 petabytes, and you probably have to jump on Wikipedia to figure out what a petabyte is if you don't know, but this is a very, very vast amount of information. And we have that, you know, stored in two technologies, in Hadoop technology and a Teradata technology, and that data is used by all of the technologists at eBay to improve the experiences that we deliver, and also, of course, used by our analyst community within the company and our finance community within the company to really run the business on your behalf. A couple of technical factoids: we serve up over 2 billion pages a day, so 2,000 million pages a day. Which is quite staggering. We're operating at a scale that's quite something. And those 2 billion page views generate over 75 billion database calls each day. So there's a lot of kind of behind the scenes work that goes into producing each of the pages that you see on eBay. So it's a very vibrant marketplace. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of technology. It's a really, really, really interesting space to be involved in. The key topic, though, I wanted to talk to you about today, of course, though, is search. And I thought it might be useful just to set the context about what search is and how search works before we move on and talk about the eBay problem in particular. So it might take a little bit of a while to get through this particular slide, but please do bear with me. So the key task of the search engine is to find data that matches the information needs that primarily our buyers have, and those information needs are primarily expressed through queries. So typically, when a buyer comes to eBay, they have some somewhat complex need in mind. I want to get a really great deal on the latest iPad. I can hear somebody else. Are we okay?
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay. I want to get a really great deal on the latest generation iPad, and I need it by next week. And I really want to buy it from a trusted seller. That might be their information need. How they express it to us is usually, much more concisely than that. So they might just go to the search box and type iPad. It's our job to really understand what that customer really wants and really means by iPad. And as I say, that can often be much more sophisticated than the simple words that they type. Search doesn't always have queries, so you can quite often in search browse as well. So you might click on a category, for example, at eBay, because you want to see all of the items that are in that category. And that to us is another form of using the search engine. It's just a query that's more about items that belong to a certain set, rather than a set of items that match a particular information need that's expressed as a query. So that's what search does. Its job is to connect buyers to sellers at eBay, and to understand buyer needs and deliver the right results from sellers. Let's just go under the hood a little bit and talk about search. So, almost all search engines don't search the original set of data that represents the things that are available for searching by customers. Most of them search a copy, and there's good technical reasons for that, which I could go into, but I won't for the sake of brevity. But in eBay's case, what we do is we take data from our underlying site databases, the databases that sit behind the eBay sites and primarily are there for sort of the transactional part of what we do. We take the data from those databases and we move it into our search grid. Our search grid has many thousands of machines, and we actually provide search over that copy of the data. So there's a lot of copying going on in search from these underlying sort of sources of record that are in the databases to the search grid, which provides the search that all of you use. We don't also, in search, typically actually go to that raw data and search it. We don't typically scan through every piece of information that's available and match a query to it. What we do is we build a thing called an index. You can think of that as being just like the back of a book. So if you and I had a book, and we're looking for something on the topic of fitness, and we've got a book in front of us, we might quickly turn to the back into the index, and we might scan, we might do some flipping back and forwards through the index looking for F for fitness, and then when we find F, we might do a little bit of scanning to find the word fitness, and when we find the word fitness, it gives us some page numbers that we can then turn to learn more about fitness. That's very, very similar to how our search engine does its searching, and that's very much how all search engines work, is they have this index structure that's a lot like the back of a book, and it's used to rapidly locate information that matches the information needs that the customers have. So, again, standing back from it, lots going on here. There's data being copied continuously from the source of record into the search grid. There's this index structure that's analogous to the back of a book being built, and that's being searched all of the time to provide answers to questions. Jumping over to the second last point, when a user provides a query, most search engines do some ranking. What ranking means is that there's a function that's doing some statistical measurement that's trying to approximate user relevance. It's trying to make sure we deliver to the customer the things that meet their information need. And what we're trying to do, of course, is sort things from the most relevant to the least relevant. So what we want to happen for our customers is that when they type a query like iPad, we understand what they really need, what's the deep information need that they have, and we present to them high on the first results page, results that match that information need and allow them to go and purchase the items that they want to purchase. All right, so I'll move us along to the next slide, and maybe just get into talking a little bit about eBay. So the current search technology that we're using for most things that you see on the site is a thing called Voyager. It was named, and of course, when engineers name things, you get these kinds of names. It was named after two spacecraft that are actually the furthest man-made objects from Earth today. And I think many of you have probably read about the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 space probes leaving the solar system recently. So they're two amazing spacecraft, and I think that's a little bit how we think about our search engine. It's old, but it's impressive. And it's served us very, very well, and it's the thing that today powers most of the search scenarios that you see on eBay.com and across our sister sites across the world. It also powers a lot of other things. So I'm sure many of you have been using the feed on the homepage. That relies very much on search. So behind the scenes, the feed is making lots of requests to search for information about the items that it's showing so that it can present the most relevant feed possible. Our merchandising also makes use of search in a very light way. So whenever you're on the home page, view item, the search results page, and you see items that are related, those to some degree depend on the Voyager search engine to provide results. So search internally is doing a lot more than answering the queries that our customers type into the search box. Voyager's over 10 years old. I think it's generally agreed that we started the project in the very early 2000s, and it shipped to the site somewhere around 2002. And so it's an old piece of technology, but it's served us very, very well. And later on today, I'm going to talk to you about Cassini, which is our new search engine that's designed to replace the Voyager search engine. But to sum up, Voyager is the engine that we've been working on over the last 10 years or so. So let's talk about what makes search at eBay particularly challenging and particularly cool, and why it attracts some of the world's best and brightest that I'm lucky enough to work with here today. So we talked about the 400 million items earlier on. They're listed in multiple languages. We're very, very passionate about global commerce and enabling customers to connect to each other across the globe. When you get excited about doing that, not only do you have to think about the logistics of that, of how you ship items and return items and the general fabric of commerce, but you also have to think about things like language. And so, we would love, for example, a customer who is in Russia to be able to type their query in Russian, but to be able to match that query to items that were listed in English, but be able to understand those items translated back into Russian. I'm sure you'll all appreciate that's a very, very hard problem. I'm sure many of you have used online translation software to translate a page to be in another language, and you'll know that that's a science, and it's far from perfect. But we have lots of challenges in that area and very, very exciting ones. Our collection of items changes very, very fast indeed. So, kind of rough rule of thumb would be to say that 10 to 20% of the items that are on eBay today won't be there tomorrow. They'll either have sold or ended in some other way. That means, of course, that there's a new 10 or 20% that's joining the collection. And so things are changing very, very fast. And for the items that are in the system at any point in time, there's lots of things about those items that are changing. So prices are changing, bid counts are changing, folks are revising the listings, and so on. If you think about what I told you earlier, which is that we have an underlying source of record in our databases, and we're copying that into our search grid, and then we're building that index. There's lots of implications of that in how our technology has to work. So we have to be listening very, very carefully for changes and moving those changes into the search grid as quickly as we possibly can. So lots of hard engineering challenges there. You all know, of course, that you can find just about anything on eBay. We would love to have every possible thing that can be sold, and we have to optimize for every type of item. So we try very hard to be good for everything, and that's a very, very challenging problem indeed. And of course, we're a very open marketplace that offers lots of flexibility, and I'm sure many of you are sellers, and I'm sure many of you don't follow exactly the same practices. I'm sure many of you, for example, don't use the same keywords or units. So here's some examples. Some people will say cm, others will say centimeter. Some people will say GB, others will say gigabytes. And it's our job to think about how those things can be interchanged and make sure that when a buyer expresses their query using one terminology, that matches to what sellers might express as a different piece of terminology. And we've still got a little ways to go on that one. We call that units of measure, and that's one of our big areas of investment at the moment. Colors are often interchangeable. I'll give you an example of that. Synonyms are often tight, like mobile phone and cell phone. I think most people would agree are the same thing. And in other cases, synonyms are a little bit looser. So you might argue, for example, that a laptop and a notebook are slightly different, or you might believe they're the same. But it's our responsibility to make sure that when people say laptop and they mean notebook, that we deliver great notebook results. eBay loves abbreviations. I use them all the time in my querying. There's an example. SGA means stadium giveaway, and it's often associated with the major league sports. Lots of spelling errors, and we have to deal with those. But really, what we're trying to do is to make sure that even if you use different ways of expressing the same things as a buyer or a seller, that we match those together, and that's a big area of investment for us, and one of the really exciting challenges of search at eBay. All right, so let's turn the page now. Hopefully that's useful to you guys. You get a little bit more context on why search is exciting and how search works. I thought it might be fun now to just kind of talk a little bit about how to be successful in selling on eBay through search. So the first thing I'd say is let's set some context about what search does. And I'd say that search is not the only step to having a successful transaction. And I think sometimes a lot of people forget that. They think that search is the be-all and end-all of being successful on eBay, and I think there's much more to being successful on eBay than simply being visible in search. So I'll give you my taxonomy. You might have a different one, but if your primary goal is to sell items, then perhaps we could agree that here are three kind of steps in that process. So first of all, you need to be found in search. And search has many different paths. As I said, there's searches where people type queries. There are other searches where people browse, and the browsing can be by browsing through categories, discovery through the feed, or browsing through our merchandising that I talked about earlier on, just to name a few. Email, of course, is another source. But there's lots of different ways to land in a result set or to find a particular item, but search is definitely one important way of doing that, and I'll narrow the scope to that. So the first thing is, does the item show up in search? The second thing that's important in having a successful transaction is does the buyer actually click on that item that's turned up in search and actually visit the view item page? So does it attract clicks? So the first step is, does it turn up? The second step is, does somebody click on it? And then of course the third step is where you actually have a transaction. So you actually sell that particular item to the buyer who's found it and then clicked on it. So that's one way to think about a taxonomy of what goes on, and search is certainly the first step in that taxonomy. When I sit down with buyers and I talk to them about what they want from search, they often talk very specifically, and they sometimes talk more generally. But to me, I take away three big themes from our buyers about what they want from search. First of all, they want trust. So they want to be able to buy items from sellers who offer a great experience. That can mean a lot of different things to buyers. That can mean anything from reliable shipping times through to easy returns, through to wanting to buy from somebody who's been recognized as eBay as a trusted seller. So that's certainly a way of generalizing quite a broad set of concepts. But they talk a lot about trust. Of course, it's intuitive, I'm sure, that they talk a lot about value, so they want to get a great deal, and that great deal again can have some complexity in it. It could be just simply the price of the item, or they might think about being able to get a great deal on a used item or a refurbished item or a new item that's in another condition. They might bring those concepts together, and of course they're concerned about shipping, and they love particularly free shipping or low shipping cost. And the last thing is they want relevance. So when they run a query, they want to see us doing a great job of ranking those items from the most relevant to their information need through to the least relevant. So they don't want to see the search experience cluttered with items that aren't relevant to their query. So there's again a taxonomy. You might have your own taxonomy, but when I speak to buyers, they're the three big themes that I take away. So let's talk about it from another perspective. Let's again go back to that first step in the three steps. So first of all, being discovered in search, and then, as I said, getting clicked on, and then the third is actually resulting in a transaction. Let's talk about that first step a little bit more. How do you actually turn up in search? So here's how we think about it. Again, there's lots of different ways you could talk about this taxonomy. But first of all, we think about your listings getting visibility in the first step as recall. And what that means to us is that your items turn up for the buyer information needs that are relevant to those items. So that's important. So our first step is making sure that we have a set of items that are relevant to the query that the user has expressed. The second thing is once we've got a set of items that match a query is refinement, and that is making sure that we winnow that set down to the right set of items that match the query. And then the third step is best match, which is organizing them from most relevant to least relevant. And I'll talk a little bit more about these over the next couple of slides. So let's go back to that first step of recall. How do you be successful at recall? Well, really, there's two things that primarily drive recall in our Voyager technology. The first is the keywords that you have in the title. So if, for example, the buyer says that expresses the query iPad, then one set of listings that will match that will be listings that have the word iPad in the title. The second way you can affect recall is by adoption of the catalog. And so if when you're listing an item, you adopt that to the catalog, you say this iPad is actually this product, then we use that information, knowing that's that product, to match against match for users who are looking for that particular product. So keywords in the title is important, and so is matching against the catalog. The second step, as I said, is search refinement. The buyers typically do search refinement by clicking in the left navigation that you see on the search results page, and sometimes by refining their query. You can make sure that you turn up for search refinements after you've been recalled by thinking about the following three things. So making sure that the item that you're listing is in the most appropriate category or categories on eBay. So if, for example, the user types the query iPad and they get a search result with a results page with a very large number of items, they might decide that one way to reduce that set is to go over to the left navigation and click on whatever appropriate devices category there is in our category tree. If you haven't correctly listed that item against that devices category, then you're not going to turn up when the user refines to that category. Item specifics is another way that search refinement works, and so that's you adding things like brands, sizes, colors, those kinds of things. And again, when the user clicks over in the left navigation to refine their search results, if you're not in the game, if you haven't set the item specifics appropriately for your listings, then you won't turn up when they refine. And I've shown a little example of that over on the right-hand side. So you can see that for these hair dryers, there's a bunch of different types: professional, travel size, hood dryer, hot air brush. I'm not an expert in hair dryers, but they sound like reasonable types of hair dryers. You can see next to those counts of the number of those kinds of hair dryers that we have item specifics for. If somebody decides they want a travel size one and checks that box, they're going to see the 170 that are travel size hair dryers. If you're one of the sellers who hasn't specified what kind of hair dryer this is, then you'll go into that not specified box that I've circled in red, and you're not going to turn up in the search refinement for that customer. And you can see here in this particular example, there's almost as many sellers who've not specified the item specifics as there are that have. In fact, it looks like more have not specified the items specifics than actually have. So that's a problem. And if you can be in the game by simply adopting the right item specifics. And then, of course, adopting the right item condition is also important, so that when users refine to new items, used items, refurbished items, whatever it is they choose to refine to, you want to make sure that that you turn up correctly for those. So there's some tips on giving your listings the best chances to be seen, and hopefully that gives you a feeling for how search recall works and search refinement works, and why those are all important things. Let's move on now and talk a little bit about the broader landscape, and this sort of touches on best match and also helps you think more about recall and search refinement. Let me just walk through a few other things that I'd suggest to you to think about if you want to be successful in getting visibility in search, getting clicks so that users visit your items, and ultimately transacting and selling the items that you've got on eBay. So let's go back to the being found box at the very, very top. So as I said, listing in the correct category is really important. That helps you with refinement. It also affects best match. So we know, for example, that folks who type iPad generally prefer devices over accessories, and we most certainly use that in best match. So listing your item in the correct category is important. And a meaningful title is clearly important, because, as I said, I've just told you that one of the most important components of recall is matching the query to the title of the item that you have. Using item specifics and item condition I've already covered. Using the long duration multi-quantity buy it now format is important if it's appropriate for the listings that you have. So if you want to put something on the site and let it sell over a long period of time, you've got a lot of stock of that particular item, that's absolutely the most appropriate format. And we can do the best job in search of ranking your items if you adopt that format, because we can build up deep information about those items because they're on the site for a long period of time. I'd also urge you all, if you're not a top-rated seller, to study what it takes to be a top-rated seller, because being a top-rated seller is important in search. Again, trust is very important. I said that earlier, and one of the ways we measure trust is by boosting folks who are in the ETRS Plus program, and we also look at the signals that underlie that program. So certainly, working towards the important trusted standards that we have in the marketplace is important to being found. So let's now talk about being viewed. It's important that, and this I guess intuitively makes sense, it's important that your items are returned for the right queries, right? So if somebody types the query iPad, they're probably looking for devices. They might be looking for accessories, but they're probably looking for devices. If they're scrolling down and they find a T-shirt, they might say, hey, that's not particularly relevant. It's pretty unlikely that they're going to give that a click. I guess there's a case where somebody's produced a T-shirt that says iPad on the front, but I'd say in general, probably what's going on here is that somebody's mischievously put the word iPad somewhere in their title to try and get themselves more exposure in search for folks who are genuinely looking for an iPad. That's not a good idea, and certainly we have understanding of when that's happening for the wrong reasons, and that's not a good practice to undertake in search. Using great pictures is really important if you want to get a click. One thing we've learned over the last few years is that great pictures really matter to our buyers, and that the sellers who are providing higher resolution pictures without graffiti, pictures without borders, and really great photographs of the items they want to sell are getting more clicks. So investing in great photographs is really, really important. And a definitive title is really important. The customers do take time to read the titles, and they want a definitive title that really represents that item. And they too are pretty good at detecting keyword spam, and they're pretty good at getting they want to see something honestly represented. They don't want to waste their clicks. So that's really, really important. Being price competitive, incredibly important. This is a marketplace that changes daily, if not hourly. And a lot of the issues that I talk to sellers about often turn out to be price competition issues. One of the most common questions I get is, hey, I haven't changed anything over the last few months, but suddenly my sales have gone to zero. What's going on? And quite often the answer is, well, you're not price competitive anymore. You really do have to change things. It's not a badge of honor to say I haven't changed anything. You've really got to be watching the marketplace and watching price competition. Being competitive today doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be competitive tomorrow. So really seeing what your competition's doing and maintaining that competition turns out to be really, really important in being viewed in search. And a lot of those cases, when I dig into them, I find that the seller is still getting plenty of impressions in search. They're certainly being visible in search. They're certainly being recalled. What's actually happened here is their clicks have started to drop simply because they're no longer price competitive. Specifying shipping costs is super important. We know that from lots of studies, lots of work with buyers, that being clear about what the shipping costs are, being honest with the shipping costs, having shipping costs that are as low as possible, and ideally free shipping really does matter to being viewed once you've turned up in search. And then sales. Let's talk about actually selling items once a customer's clicked on view item and made their way through to your items. I think having a really clear, really carefully structured and comprehensive item description is really important. Our buyers really do take their time to study the descriptions that sellers provide, and having those clear and simple, structured and comprehensive is really important. Having a clear returns policy is super important. Our customers are increasingly expecting to be able to return items, and I think I'm sure many of you as buyers are expecting to be able to do that when you transact online. So that's super important. Fast shipping is super important. International shipping important. And again, back to imagery. Having really great imagery in your descriptions is super, super important. Our customers are shopping in a more and more visual way with every day that goes by. So I can't overstate the importance of great imagery. So hopefully that helps. I'm sure many of you are sitting there thinking, hey, why isn't he being more specific about search? And I thought I'd just talk about that for a moment and just tell you why I'm not more specific about search and won't answer specific questions about how best match works. So if you think about our goal in search, what we're looking to do is to ask our sellers to think very hard about those three pillars that I talked about earlier. So to think about delivering trust, to think about delivering value, and to think about delivering relevance for our sellers. That's where we want you to focus. We don't want you to focus on subtle details of how our algorithms work and how you might be able to work around those specifics in order to gain an advantage. We want you to think about those three big pillars. How can I become a trusted seller and be more trusted? How can I offer great value? And how can I deliver relevant listings? We also want a level playing field for all sellers. So we don't want to create an unfair advantage for a set of sellers who have the time and resources to invest in doing complicated, complex things that involve reverse engineering our search algorithm. We want everybody who's offering great trust, great value, and great relevance to be on a level playing field and have an equal opportunity to sell on our marketplace. I'd also say search is changing. Our guiding principles will never change. We're always going to be about trust, value, and relevance, but search is changing. And shortcuts that you might take today may not work tomorrow. It's my goal to make sure that we use more and more data in Best Match so that we can make better and better decisions about how to order items by relevance to our buyers. And so, I'm on a constant mission with the team to bring more and more data into our search engine to allow it to make better decisions as we go forward. The last thing I'd say, and it's not really on this topic, is please be aware of unofficial advice. a lot of what I read online is just plain wrong or misguided, or is shortcuts that may have worked in the past that don't work now, or shortcuts that may work now that we will work on making sure don't work tomorrow because we don't believe they're creating a fair marketplace. I would very much encourage you to bump it up a level and really think about trust, value, and relevance, and to really look at the slide the last couple of slides that I just presented to you, which really I hope give you some really good principles that you can follow about how to match that aspiration of trust, value, and relevance. All right, so that's the end of that section. I'll look forward to some questions on that one at the end. Let me just talk a little bit about Cassini. I've got a great picture here of the Cassini Huygens probe. So as I said earlier, we named Voyager after 1976-77 pair of satellites, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, that are now on the edge of the solar system. Again, if you let engineers name products, guess what they do? They stick to the theme. And so when we decided that we wanted to re-engineer eBay search and we needed to name the search engine, the engineers said, hey, let's call it Cassini. And they named it after the Cassini Huygens probe. This is a space probe that was launched in 1996. And so you can see and a very, very successful mission that's done lots of great things. If you type Cassini into any web search engine, you can go and visit the NASA page and learn a little bit about what Cassini's been up to. A very, very successful mission, and you can see what the team's thinking. It's a nod to our new search engine being, kind of like our old one, but a much more modern piece of technology and an equally successful piece of technology. So, fast forward 20 years. The latest, the greatest, but still in that theme of space probes. But anyway, that's what engineers do. They're not brand marketing guys. They tend to stick to science and space and things like that, as I'm sure you'll appreciate. So you might ask, well, what is Cassini? What is this search engine? It really is a ground-up rebuilding of eBay's search engine. So we really have started from scratch. We decided that Voyager, as it passed its 10th anniversary, just wasn't the platform that we needed to deliver that trusted, relevant, high-value experience to our buyers and do a great job by the sellers. You can think about an analogy here if you like. I'm sure many of you aren't using the copy of Microsoft Windows that you bought 10 years ago. I'm sure most of you aren't using the copy of Microsoft Office that you bought 10 years ago, and I'm sure you're certainly not using the computers that you bought 10 years ago. They're probably a collector's item at this point, and it's not any different in the world of search or in the world of large-scale technology like the technologies we build at eBay. Software gets old, new features come along, the expectations of what that software can do change, systems change, hardware changes. And most importantly, the expectations of our customers change as they use search, throughout the web and throughout their lives. So we just decided that a 10-year-old platform wasn't the platform that we needed to take us forward. We needed to make a change, and so we decided to start again. Cassini will ultimately completely replace Voyager. So we plan to retire Voyager in the future and be an entirely Cassini-powered platform. I think I've talked about many of the points already as to why we're doing Cassini. A couple of kind of more technical points, I guess, would be that we want a really modern, operable platform. We want our engineers and technologists to be as productive as possible in improving the customer experience. We don't want our engineers kind of keeping the software running, working in the data centers, managing what's now an older piece of software. So we really want a modern, operable platform. We want to innovate faster. If we spend more time on search, we'll be able to move search faster. If we work on a modern new platform, we'll be able to innovate more quickly. And as I said, it's a competitive world. Everybody's working on search and everybody's improving search, and we want to be super, super competitive in that space and deliver the absolute best experience that we can for our customers. So it was time for something new. I won't spend much of today talking about all the different things that Cassini will be able to do, but I'll tell you about one of them. You're welcome to ask me about others when we finish the talk today. One thing that Cassini absolutely will do, in addition to searching titles and the catalog data, as I discussed earlier, is Cassini will also search descriptions to improve recall. And it will do that automatically without relying on the buyers using an advanced option, and I'll show you that in a moment. It also means for our sellers that you'll no longer have to rely on the title to ensure that your item gets visibility. So it'll make it much, much easier to write, nice, short, concise titles that really showcase your items and really draw clicks from our buyers. And we're already using this technology, this description search technology, throughout parts of eBay search. As I said at the start, Voyager is powering most of what you see on the site today. Cassini's doing a couple of things. One thing it's doing is this thing called null and low recovery, and that actually relies on description search, this new feature of Cassini. And I'll show you that visually over the next couple of slides. So here's an example. I'm sure many of you have got children who are tweens or teens, and I'm sure many of you therefore might have seen this movie Pitch Perfect. I've certainly seen it a few times, more times than I care to count. Here it is being sold by one of our sellers on eBay. So what you can see here is a screenshot of a view item, and I've just scrolled it down a little bit. That little red box that I've drawn at the bottom is my own drawing, and I've just circled a piece of text, and it says a feisty co-ed joins a collegiate a cappella group. So that's the first phrase that you would read if you picked up the DVD and kind of flipped it over and read the back of the box. So let's see what happens if you jump into eBay search, and I just did a screenshot of the UK site a couple of weeks ago. Things are changing. It's going to get this great new feature that I'm showing you in a moment. But here's what would have happened until very, very recently. If I typed feisty co-ed joins a collegiate a cappella group as my query, guess what? No results at all on eBay. All you're seeing is sponsored results, and that's it. So not a great experience for our buyers. If you went out on the web and typed a feisty co-ed joins a collegiate a cappella group, you are most definitely going to find copies of Pitch Perfect. So we're just not doing what our customers need us to do in this particular example. If you're a highly technical buyer, then you could go into our advanced search. You could click on that little box down the bottom there that says title and description. You could run the query, and you certainly would find this particular item. But you had to do something very, very advanced and complicated that only a tiny, tiny fraction of our buyers would actually do. All right. Here's what's happening now in North America. So if you go to the North American site, ebay.com, and you type a feisty co-ed joins a collegiate a cappella group, you get much better results. So it does say at the top that we actually found none that exactly match, because we're still doing that Voyager title matching task, but you can see that the page is dominated by more items that are related to a feisty co-ed joins a collegiate a cappella group. You can see there are lots and lots of copies of Pitch Perfect and really great results for our customers. This particular piece of technology that's returning all these copies of Pitch Perfect is Cassini. So we've actually brought Cassini in for this particular scenario as a way of testing it and trying it out with our customer base, and I hope you'll agree that this is a much, much better experience than the experience that Voyager was able to provide. So there's one feature of Cassini that it will have in the future, and we will look forward to experimenting with description search as we go forward. So when's Cassini arriving? It's arrived for that null and low results search scenario that you just saw. And it has also arrived for completed search. So when you run a query on search, you'll see at the top that you can select completed listings. If you click on that, you will find that those results are powered by Cassini. We've had Cassini doing that for, I want to say, 6 to 9 months. So that was probably the first scenario we actually shipped out to the site that's powered by Cassini. That was an exciting way for us to test out the technology. It's been very, very successful, and the biggest reason we did that was to help our buyers and sellers. The old Voyager completed item search only searched over 14 days of data. The new Cassini search searches over 90 days of data. So that really allows sellers and buyers to really understand what the sales price is of items that they're looking to sell or buy. We've been testing Cassini for active item search in North America since last December, so a small fraction of our customers have been getting Cassini by default. So when they type their query iPad or whatever it is, a small fraction are actually getting results back from Cassini rather than results back from Voyager. And that really allows us to understand how close Cassini is to being able to replace Voyager. And our goal very, very much is to gently replace Voyager by mimicking its behavior in North America. So our goal is to change from the Voyager platform to this new Cassini platform without folks noticing. So very much mimicking the behavior. Once we get Cassini in place, we've got that exciting platform for innovation. We've got features like description search that we can turn on and use, and we can really unleash our team on really improving the customer experience for everybody. So that's our initial goal, is to gently replace it, and we're working on that right now. You can expect to be powering active item search in North America very, very soon, certainly within the next couple of months. Internationally, you can expect Cassini to roll out by 2014, and we don't have a detailed roadmap for that yet. We're very, very much focused on North America and getting that absolutely right for our customers, and then we'll begin working on the international rollout and how we go about phasing that plan. Right. So with that, I will stop. I know there are a few slides more here on the webinars that just highlight the great sponsors of the program. So I'll just flash those guys up. Some terrific folks that many of which I get a chance to work with. I want to thank you all for listening to the presentation, and I'll turn it back to the organisers to let the questions start.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We like to make sure we mention all of our sponsors since we're so grateful to them for providing this. One of our sponsors is eBay Radio, where you get great information and interviews online twice a week to help eBay sellers be more successful. That's at ebayradio.com. We also have Cabbage. If you need a way to grow your business, Cabbage can provide the funding to small businesses in just seconds. Outright.com, which is your small business finances all in one place. And Terapeak, because you can make more money on eBay with Terapeak. PageMage, which helps eBay sellers stand out and sell more on eBay. And Stamps.com, where you can get postage and stamps on demand, print your own labels in just seconds from your own PC. We're really glad you're here, and we know that your time is valuable and that you've agreed to stay for about 30 minutes to handle some Q&A. So we want to set a few expectations for the Q&A. Number one, we will only be going 30 minutes. If you have questions that we don't get to, we encourage you to post those on our Facebook group page. There's a lot of interaction there, and we'll do our best to get to them. Secondly, if you're asking a question that does not deal with search specifically, we're going to skip that question, and we're going to refer you to the Facebook group. We'd really like to focus our questions today on search. So Karen has been busily compiling all of the questions, and I know that you were provided with some of them ahead of time. So if you want to go ahead and address some of those questions that you had on the Google document we shared, I'll let you and Karen handle that.
All right. Will you let me know what works best for you, Karen?
Well, I've been working on I can start with the ones you already got, and I've been working on adding all the new ones that come into the bottom of the Google Docs so they're all in one place.
Okay.
So the first one, and you were just actually talking about this, is when is eBay's new search framework expected to be fully deployed onto all of eBay's international sites?
Yeah. So as I said, I think just a moment ago, so we're working busily on North America right now, and then we'll sit down and work on an international roadmap. We don't have that international roadmap defined yet, but I think a rough rule of thumb would be to say that by 2014 we'll have made significant progress on the international rollout.
Okay. I think I'm going to bounce back and forth between these and this one, because this one I've been asked many times during this webinar. HTML in the listings, or if you use a third-party lister or any of those things, will that affect how you get found in search if you have templates and things like that?
Not really. I think no, not really. I think the primary goal of those should be you should just think about those as ways to present your description as effectively as possible so that the buyers can make a great decision about buying that item. What we're far more interested in is the content, not the presentation. We may in the future make some use of the presentation, but right now, the way we work is we effectively strip out the presentation and just keep the content and use the content in search. And I think that's what we'll be doing for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Yeah, that question came up a lot because I know there's a lot of question about templates in general because of mobile and all of those things. So
yeah, and I'd certainly think about them in the context of mobile. I still see a lot of sellers using Flash in their descriptions, and I think as a selling community, we should stop and kind of think about that, because all those folks who are using Apple iPhones aren't seeing those Flash videos because the iPhone doesn't support Flash. So I think, thinking very carefully about not just templates, but the kinds of content that you use in descriptions is super, super important. I think a lot of folks are using, a great technology in Flash, but one that's not supported across, a very, very important platform that lots of our buyers are using.
Okay. The questions are rolling in as fast as I'm reading the new ones. Okay, the next one is, as a buyer, if I specify U.S. only, why am I continuing to get sellers who list the item location as China and shipping from there?
So I saw this one in the questions, and I started. I mean, clearly that shouldn't be happening, and I've asked the team to go and investigate if that is happening and for what cases that's happening. I'd be surprised if it was, and if it is, then then that's an issue, and we'll take that one on. I don't know who asked that question. Obviously, I've just got the list of questions here, not who asked them. But if the person's out there who asked that question, I'd love them to share the details with me. On the first slide, you've got my email address. It's hugh.williams@ebay.com. If you just send me through the details, I'd love to go and take a look at that. That sounds like it's a problem.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I just have the questions too. These were asked in some of the Facebook groups we have, so that's where they would be located. Okay, what can I do as a buyer to search accurately by price from lowest to highest without having what they're calling fake multivariate listings clouding the results?
Yeah, this is a great question. So, as I said earlier on, what I'd really love our selling community to do is to really focus on, trust and value and relevance. I think what's being highlighted here is that somebody's trying to work around trust. They're trying to do something that's a little, I don't know what the right word is, kind of nefarious, to gain exposure in search. I know about this issue. The team knows about this issue. We're working on this issue, and we'll make this issue go away. When we do, I'm sure there'll be some other, subtle little edge case or exploit that somebody out there can find to kind of work their way around providing a trusted experience. But I'd really, really encourage people to bump up a level and focus on trust. These kinds of search manipulation tricks that people are pulling, will ultimately backfire, because, as I say, we're very, very focused as a team on delivering a trusted experience, and we work through these issues all the time.
Yeah, it is very hard when you're trying to look for something and all of this stuff comes up.
Yeah.
Okay, Cassini, as it gathers buyer's search term within the algorithm, where, if any place, is one sequence given more weight than another?
Yeah, so, as I said earlier, I'm going to avoid sort of answering specific questions about how the technology works. Again, I think the focus here ought to be on make sure that you deliver a title that's super relevant to the item that you're describing, that's going to deliver the best possible impression to the buyer, and focusing your description on accurately describing the item, shipping, returns, and other things that are appropriate to making sure the customers can make the best possible decision.
Okay, this is one, and I remember you were talking about this earlier, that they're finding that typing quart, because they sell pots and pans, doesn't equal QT, or pint doesn't bring up PT, and sometimes the plurals don't bring up the singular.
Yeah, so working on all of these, we have a big project in the team right now called Units of Measure, which is really about kind of knocking down each one of these in a really methodical way so that they work properly in connecting our buyers to our sellers. But it's something we've made, good progress on, I think, in the last year or so, but we've still got a ways to go. I'll make sure the team sees these particular examples, and we get these ones taken care of sometime soon.
Okay. Now this one happened, I have it further down too because it was asked a lot. One of the things people are asking is, some people do good till cancel, some people do 30 days, which does any of those give you a bump or a demotion in search?
No, they don't.
Which is better?
No, they don't. I would argue that you should pick the format that's right for the items that you're selling. So if I'm just looking at my desk here, I'm a big buyer, and I'm starting to be a regular seller on eBay. I was looking at my desk here, and I've got a game-used baseball sitting in front of me. from an obscure game. Now I'm thinking, if I'm selling this on the platform, the best choice I'd probably make would be good till cancelled, because I'm going to have to wait a while probably to find a buyer for this particular item from this particular minor league game. And so I use good to cancel because I think that's appropriate for this particular item. I'm sure there's plenty of other items where it's appropriate to use 30 days or shorter. Because you stock's changing or whatever's appropriate for your business. And I would just encourage folks to pick the right format that matches their business need. We work very hard to make sure that there's no advantage of one format over another.
Okay. Does best match criteria, price, free shipping, and TRS are they still the best listing ideas to be on the top of best match?
Absolutely, absolutely. So as I said earlier, studying what it takes to be an eBay trusted seller, the top-rated seller program, is really important. So just understanding all of the pillars, working on those, and being great at those is super important. They're key elements of how we understand trust in search.
Okay. Will time ending soonest ever be the default instead of best match again?
No.
That was an easy one. Okay, this one is, they even gave a specific. What driver in search causes it to override my specific search keywords to offer me something different? For example, and not because I made a typo, if I search large blue balloon, it might offer me a large purple basketball.
Yeah, I'm sure that particular example doesn't happen, but I get the spirit of the question.
Yeah.
So what's going on here is when the buyer types a query, we do our absolute best to understand the real intent of that query, as I said before. And so, for example, if somebody types notebook, we want to make sure we match laptops. If somebody types SGA, that was the acronym I shared earlier, we want to make sure that matches somebody who's listed it as a stadium giveaway. So we have a technology behind the scenes as part of our sort of recall suite that actually modifies customers' queries to make sure that they match the right set of items in the collection. And we're continually improving that technology, but sometimes we get it wrong. So, we do lots of data mining. What that means is we use, millions and millions and millions of previous queries of customers and their behaviors to produce these data sets that tell us what synonyms are and what acronyms are when they're expanded. We use it in the units of measure work and all kinds of other places. So we massively mine this data to try and look for patterns that we can use to improve search. And occasionally we'll add things to the dictionary, and I'm sort of using that with quotation marks, that are wrong, that we create through data mining. The good thing is our system's kind of self-learning, so the system figures out fairly quickly that it's made a mistake, and then when we do the next release of that dictionary again with quotations, we tend to correct the mistakes that we've made. But we think we're on a continual path in improving this technology. We're pretty excited about it. It's certainly we know it's helping our buyers find the items that they want. But as we go along, the occasional thing goes wrong, and we have to detect those and fix those.
Okay. And since you were just talking about data mining, someone was asking if their emails are part of what you data mine.
So let me see what that question was. See what I wrote.
Number 15.
15. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What I'd say is I bump up a level. So again, what we're absolutely trying to do is to make use of the right kinds of data to help our buyers find the things that match their intents. We are not today using emails to do that. If we thought that was the right thing to do for our buyers, then we absolutely would do that with respect to their privacy, and we do that in the right way. But that's not something we're doing today, and we don't have any plans right now to do that.
Okay. Does Cassini pay attention to categories and subcategories, or just the item?
Categories are very, very important, including the subcategories too.
Okay. This is a long one. It's number 17 on the list you have. Why are low-priced items prioritized over high-priced items, seemingly by search terms alone? And then there was an example of a $125 Ralph Lauren black label wool skirt. would be buried well $14.99. JCPenney's polyester pencil skirt would get top results. If the search parameter was black pencil skirt, 12.
Yeah, so I think that's that's a very valid question, but it's asked with a fairly subjective viewpoint. I'm sure if I polled a lot of people on the call and said what and gave them a list of results for a black pencil skirt size 12, if I polled everybody on the call and says which one do you think is the item that best matches that intent, I'm sure we'd get a lot of different answers. I'm sure not everybody is going to be pointing at the $125 expensive wool pencil skirt. I'm sure lots of people are going to be pointing at the great deal they might get from the Worthington JCPenney's polyester pencil skirt. So I think it's a good question, but it's very subjective, and some level beauty's in the eye of the beholder. The way search works today is we look to deliver the best experience that we can for the majority of buyers that are out there. And I'll wholeheartedly acknowledge that on the edges, we'll make mistakes. Some buyers come in with different intents, and we may not get it right, but we might be getting it right for the majority of buyers. For those buyers where we miss, we have all the great refinement features down the left that I talked about earlier, and of course, there's opportunity there to modify the query as well. So in this particular case, we have price refinement in the left navigation, and if somebody's looking for a particular price point, it's just a slide of the slider away to narrow in on that price point when we don't get it right out of the gate.
Okay. The next question is, how much weight is given in search results to new overused? Is there a difference?
There's no bias at all.
Okay. All right, 19 you've pretty much covered already. 20, as top-rated sellers get priority in search and sellers that have listings loaded with inventory that's running good to cancel, how does a new seller get good search results? It's question 20 from the ones I sent you, or we sent you.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Maybe rephrasing it, I think the question that's being asked is, hey, there's some great sellers on the platform with a lot of velocity right now who are selling something that I want to sell. I'm new. Do I stand a chance against those guys? I see all the time plenty of folks, succeeding in exactly that equation. Again, I think that the basic principles, I'll keep drumming them home, I guess, is trust, value, and relevance. And value, I think, is particularly key there when it's a commodity item that's it's moving at a high velocity and there's great competition. And often some of the sellers who were selling a lot, call me when that happens and say, hey, search is broken, what's going on? And usually the answer is, hey, a new seller's turned up with a really competitive price point, and they're really getting great velocity on the platform. So this coin has two sides, but I see lots of folks succeeding coming onto the platform in competitive areas when they're really focused on trust, value, and relevance.
Okay, and you've here's one that I know is discussed a lot in seller communities. Is the number of items you have for sale a factor in best match and where you end up?
So again, I'm going to avoid, answering specific details about best match. Again, I'd pull it up a level and say, hey, some examples I see of sellers having issues are the sellers who are trying to scale. So somebody who's a really fantastic small seller who's running at a small scale, who tries to become a very large seller, often has growing pains as they go through that process for lots of really, really great reasons as they scale their business. Often those guys come and say, hey, something's gone wrong with search. Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Ask me questions similar to this one. And often the real issue turns out to be that they're having trouble with scaling. They're having typically some problem with trust. They're having stock outs. They're having trouble with shipping. They're not able to respond to their messages as quickly as they perhaps once were. So often, they're looking for a really specific answer that's an eBay answer, but unfortunately the answer is a much broader answer often that, it's really about their business.
Okay, and the rest of the lot of the next ones you've pretty much covered. I'll ask this one, and then I think you'll probably need to go up a level on this one too, but do mobile listings get search result preference over sell your item or any of the other third-party tools?
No, there's no bias on a tools basis. So same answer as the format question. There's no bias in search.
So now these were ones that have now come in through today's webinar, just so you know. When taking returns, we know taking returns gives a visibility boost, but does taking returns for 60 days give a better boost than 14?
Yeah, again, somebody's looking for a really specific answer there. Again,
Yep.
I'd just bump that one up a level and ask, what are customers expecting in that category or for those kinds of items, and are you delivering a competitive trust experience and a competitive value experience for those kinds of customers. So if you're working in an area where everybody else is offering 60-day returns, then that's the game to get with. If everybody else is offering 14-day returns and that's what's expected, then that's the game to be with. Our buyers are very sensitive to returns, and so I'd probably focus away from what does best match do and ask what are our buyers doing, because they're the ones who are ultimately deciding what to purchase.
Okay. This question has come in a variety of formats throughout the webinar, and it's about title length. Is it better to use the full title length? Is it better to have a shorter title length for the search engines?
Again, so there's no, I think there's no magic formula here. Again, I think the key is making sure that your title definitively and accurately describes the item. If you're able to do that in a few words, that's fantastic. If you need to use more words, please do that. But increasing the length of a title by adding miscellaneous keywords is certainly more likely to cause a problem than help, particularly if those keywords are kind of off topic for the item.
Okay. The next question is, will Cassini support wildcard searches?
I was waiting for this one. So we have no plans in the future to support wildcards. I think we've turned our focus very much to investing in the technology that I talked about earlier, which is really about understanding what the buyer is asking and doing a really great job of matching that to the seller's listings in the language that they use. So we're very deeply invested in making sure that we really understand queries rather than forcing our buyers to learn an advanced syntax.
Okay. This is kind of sort of, I will throw the question out and leave it to you how to answer it.
Sure.
Do we know what Amazon uses for search and how Voyager now and Cassini in the future compare to it?
So I'd say everybody who's out there working on search, is using proprietary technology and won't talk about it, in detail publicly. So I can't tell you in detail, what other folks are out there doing. What I can say is that everybody who's operating at scale, is operating in a similar framework, in that they have an engineering team that's building their search technology. And they'll have an applied science organization that's working on their best match function or whatever their equivalent is. So I think everybody's kind of rolling their own, to use a phrase, and building their own technologies. I don't think anybody of any scale out there is able to use any of the the well-known products that are for sale in search. I think everybody at this scale is building their own technology.
Okay. And this person had to leave, but this is a really good question that she was asking and asked me if I'd get it out there. She wants to know whether Cassini will be able to translate a date such as July 21st, 1983 to 7//21/83 interchangeably for search purpose, like for a magazine.
I really hope so. Yeah, that's a little bit like a little bit like the units of measure theme. We certainly have plans to do all of that stuff and do it super well.
Okay, and September SEPT versus September, the full word spell.
All those kinds of things, common abbreviations, acronyms, dates, times, lengths, measurements, even fitment. What things fit other things. What voltage things are. Those kinds of things. We aspire to do a really great job on all of that.
Okay, and we do have a question coming up about fitment at some point. In Cassini, will VTG still find vintage? Because right now I know if you use VTG, it does get found for vintage. So that particular.
Yeah, so as I say, our goal when we launch the Cassini platform is for folks not to notice. So our goal certainly is if it worked in Voyager, it should work in Cassini. That seems like a fine example too of something that is a key difference often between how buyers and sellers express what they mean, and that's the kind of thing that we want to be able to resolve under the covers and make work. So that's a really great example of the kind of thing I was talking about with SGA and Stadium Giveaway. That's the kind of thing we continue to love to do well.
Yeah, because I know that's a big debate in the seller community, because vintage VTG is understood by eBay's, but is it translated when it goes out to the Google world too? Trying to translate that both directions.
Yeah, and obviously I can't influence what folks out there do, but we're very respectful of this being an important example of the kinds of things that people want to do on eBay, and we want to support that.
Okay. Is there a way to determine whether visibility or conversion is an issue, either on a per listing or basis or an overall for the account?
Yeah, there is. So we have our listing analytics tool, and I'd struggling excuse me. I strongly encourage people to use that, and then there's great third parties like Terapeak, who I know are a sponsor of this program, who help with similar things. But our listing analytics tools are great for that.
Yeah, that was one of the things I answered him in that, is that to test that out, because I know I use it sometimes to check things.
Yeah, it's a great tool. I use it a lot internally too to try and understand issues that folks are seeing.
Okay, and this goes back to the plural singular. This is just more of a comment than a question. When this person is in their search for an item in their eBay store, they see items, let's see, I see that items in plural can't be found if entered in singular or vice versa. So like earring versus earrings.
Yeah, so again, if there's specific examples like that, then we're looking to resolve those. And as I say, we've been marching forward, particularly over the last year, in this technology that helps deal with things like synonyms and plurals and expansions and those kinds of things. So if we haven't got to it yet, we'll get to it soon. It's a hard problem though. There's lots of things that aren't. Lots of things you can stumble over. For example, we might agree that coaches is the plural of coach, but you wouldn't want somebody who's typing coaches to suddenly be matching coach handbags, right? Because it's not really the singular of coaches in that context. So there's a lot of things you could stumble over as you do this. That's probably the worst example ever, but you get the point.
Yep.
That often names of companies don't. You want to exclude those from this kind of plural type problems, and that's hard work to do. So we're working as fast as we can on that one. We'll absolutely get better.
Yeah, I can see that could be tricky. Was Cassini predominantly designed for catalog search?
No, not at all. It's predominantly designed for listing search. It'll do a great job of supporting catalog search, but no, it's primarily designed for listing search. That's by far the hardest problem that we work on. So it's that's the key design kind of constraint.
Okay. Does the keyword in the title have to match exactly to the buyer's query? For example, will a Sony CD player and a CD player Walkman Sony create the same search results?
So I think there's two questions in there. So if you just take the first part where it says, does the word in the title have to literally match what the buyer typed? The answer is no. Again, because of this technology that I was telling you about, where we add extra words, or we look after plurals or synonyms or expansions. So no. And in fact, let's imagine somebody typed Sony compact disc player. I would want that to match an item that was listed as a Sony CD player, because I know that CD is an abbreviation of compact disc. So I'd want that to happen. I think the second part of the question seems to be a little bit about kind of just word order matter or something like that.
Yeah.
And again, that's probably a level of detail that I won't go into. I would of course want to make sure though that we don't make mistakes. So I hope that phrases matter in the future. So that if we had, let me think of an example. I'm trying to think one that's in the context of this question. So imagine there were two different titles for two different items. Somebody had one that said Sony CD Walkman, and another one said CD that was once used in my Walkman. You'd want to make sure that that the phrase Sony CD was important, because it's clearly it's a Sony CD player, not a CD that was once used in a Sony Walkman. Do you see what I mean? So sometimes I think you'll go onto our site and you'll run a query that as a buyer you had a phrase in mind, and you'll match items where that phrase is not preserved, and you'll say, what the heck's that doing there? That's not at all what I meant. And I think we need to make progress on phrases to make sure that we weed out results that really shouldn't match, that just kind of don't make sense. So I think we'll invest there. But where words are in the title and those kinds of things, I'll just go back to the point of saying that you should just focus on making sure the title's a really accurate description of the item, and it'll go great.
Okay, and this is like a question, but it's also more of a comment too. What about words like vintage style? Because it will throw you off if somebody's looking for a vintage thing and things that are vintage style pop up.
Yeah, that's one that annoys me actually too. So I think, again, I think some of those cases are fine. Where I'll give you a valid use case. If I was looking for a vintage Major League Baseball T-shirt, from where I sit as a buyer, I'd be happy to see a vintage style Major League Baseball T-shirt. I didn't really want one that was 30 years old. I'd be happy to buy one that looks 30 years old, but it's actually new. In fact, I'd probably prefer that. So there are examples where you think, hey, for me as a buyer, or for the average buyer, search is doing the right thing. There are examples though, and I think this is where this question's headed, where again somebody's doing something a little nefarious with their title. They're putting vintage style in there in a mischievous way to kind of turn up for a very popular query that's vintage, and the item isn't vintage at all and doesn't have any vintage style and probably doesn't match the intent of any reasonable buyer. And they're the kinds of things that again we continually work on, and we'll work to fix. I don't want this. I don't want people doing mischievous things with their titles in order to turn up for queries that they shouldn't turn up for. So we continue to work on those kinds of things. But I can see both sides of that one.
I can too. I have about 3 more questions because I know we're running on the amount of time you said you'd give us.
Sure.
If I put a T-shirt in the unisex category, will it be found if a searcher enters men's T-shirts or women's T-shirts or adult T-shirts? So kind of like.
Don't know, but I'd hope so. I don't know the specific answer to that one.
Okay.
I can find out.
This person sells parts in motor section and have customers occasionally ding us for item not as described when they do not really fully read eBay's fitment data or item description. Can Cassini help with customers ordering parts not compatible with their vehicle?
Oh, I think you'll have to run that by me again, Karen. Sorry.
I know, that was a big, long one. Okay, yeah. This person sells, that's why I said we had one about fitment. This person sells in the motor section and have customers occasionally ding them for item not as described when they didn't fully read eBay's fitment data or the item description. Can Cassini help with customers ordering parts not compatible with their vehicle?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess the meta goal of Cassini is to make sure that we help deliver on that promise of trust, value, and relevance. So our goal absolutely would be to make sure that if a part's turning up for a query that's not appropriate, that we work on fixing those kinds of problems. So if it's really us making a mistake in search, I would love to see us fix that. If it's customers just not reading the view items properly, or there's some issue with how the seller's adopted the catalog, then that's a separate issue. And I guess we'd have to pull this one apart. But certainly, if we're returning irrelevant things for a query, then certainly that's something we want to fix.
Okay. Here's another one that's come up a couple times. So Cassini will search description, not just item title, you were saying. So is it better to have longer descriptions or shorter descriptions?
So yeah, I can see where people are headed with this one. Again, I think I think the goal ought to be to accurately describe the item in an appropriate number of words. I'll work very hard to make sure that there's no advantage for short or long, just based on length. My goal is to give an advantage to folks who do a great job of describing the item.
Okay. And this one, it was asked by two different people on opposite sides of the coin. One person heard Cassini search will not allow some listings to be shown, and the other person asked, with Cassini, are all items listed shown in all searches? So both sides of the coin there.
Well, I think they're both a little erroneous. So if I've said something that's confused people, my apologies. But our goal with Cassini's deceptively simple. What we want to do is return the relevant listings that match the buyer's intent. And I gave you a few examples of the things that we use to do that. So, title, category, product information, things like adoption of attributes. Those kinds of things are all important. But our goal is to make sure that we return the right set of listings for the query. I don't think there's maybe going at both those questions. I mean, the goal is not to hide inventory that matches a query. That sounds like that would be the wrong thing to do. The goal is to make sure that we return all the inventory that's relevant. So if somebody types iPad, I want to show them all the iPads. I don't want to hide iPads. And at the other end of the spectrum, the goal certainly isn't to flood the search results with every listing that we have, regardless of its relevance. I want to return iPads for the query iPad, not car parts or chairs or shirts. I don't know if that helps.
I think so. Yeah, and then I know with one of the things is I know with duplicate listings, like with auctions and stuff, those are not shown until bids come in. But other than that,
yep.
And I think the only other question that we can get to that'll be fairly quick, because I know you need to go on to what the rest of your day is, does punctuation matter, or will it affect if it's in your title in search?
So again, the answer's kind of complicated. I mean, I think if I'm sure lots of us can think of examples where it should matter and examples where it shouldn't matter. So, for example, you'd want T-shirt to match a buyer who typed T-shirt as one word. And so you'd hope that the hyphen didn't matter. But perhaps if somebody typed AT&T with the ampersand, so AT ampersand T, you wouldn't want that matching the query at. You wouldn't want to just throw away that ampersand, because that ampersand is really important. And so there's other cases where you'd want the punctuation to be preserved and to work in favor of matching to the buyer. So I think there's two sides to that coin. We do some pretty simplistic stuff today in Voyager, and one of the good reasons to move on from the Voyager platform is that we want to do a better job of processing queries and processing documents, and punctuation is a great example of one great thing you can do if you can do that really well. So we'd love to do a much better job than we're doing today on working with punctuation, but I think the answer is yes and the answer is no. It's really case dependent.
Well, and I know from just working on different things myself, certain punctuation marks translate into really funny things when you move them to other places, like ampersands and quotation marks, and that's when you look at HTML and you get this huge gibberish because it translates into something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've done a good amount of HTML in my life too. It can get very frustrating kind of trying to debug those sorts of things.
Well, we thank you so much for your time. Kat, are you still around?
I'm still around. I've been watching all the questions roll through. You're a very popular guy. Thank you for coming. I want to express our gratitude towards Hugh and his assistant for organizing everything and being here. And I want to thank again our sponsors, eBay Radio, Cabbage, Outright, Terapeak, PageMage, and Stamps.com. Please visit our sponsors and support them. They provide this great educational resource at no expense for the eBay sellers. And if you have a question that did not get answered, or if you would like to explain more explanations, please join the Facebook group. I was just over there and I think I approved about 15 people. So if you want to join the group, now we'd love to have you like the Top Rated Seller Webinars Facebook page, but if you really want to have some interactive discussion, it's the Top Rated Seller Webinars Facebook group that you're going to want to look for. And you, I understand that earlier you gave out your email. They're asking if they can have that email address again, if you're willing to provide that.
Yeah, sure. It's on the first page of the slides if anybody doesn't get a chance to write it down, but it's Hugh, which is Hugh. It's a good Welsh name. .Williams at ebay.com.
That's pretty intuitive. u.williams@ebay.com. Thank you. And we hope to see you again around here. And all the rest of you, please make sure you're on our email list. And we will talk to you soon about Pinterest for eBay sellers. Thanks again for coming and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.